Welcome to The Week with Fiona MacDonald, Isla MacLeod and myself, Kenneth Roy. And let's start with a look at what the Scottish Commentariat is saying to it this morning. Ur Kezia in her Daily Record column, well, that was yesterday, but she is the only leader Labour has at the moment, so it's interesting to gain an insight into the thinking of Miss Dugdale. Well, here's something. She is proud of her native Scotland and of what she calls our Parliament. I guess she means the Scottish one. And why? Because of the Scottish reaction to the refugee crisis, what the BBC still insists on calling the migrant crisis. So you have to ask, what is the Scottish reaction? A donation of £1 million. Well, the Scottish Government gives 5 times that amount to a theatre company every year. And the First Minister has offered to take 1,000 refugees as the starting point for a meaningful discussion, as she describes it. 2 points about that. Miss Sturgeon isn't actually in a position to take 1,000 refugees. It will be up to Scotland's local authorities, the minority who want to do anything, to come to some arrangement with the Home Office. Point 2, some of us hoped that the starting point for the meaningful discussion would have been rather more, indeed significantly more than 1,000. This tokenism is somehow a source of pride. Maybe only the leader of Scottish Labour could see it that way. Someday she may even start acting like the leader of an opposition, rather than, as she often appears, a plucky, patriotic cheerleader. The petition to unseat Alistair Carmichael, the Lib Dem MP for Orkney and Shetland, is underway in the Election Court, which last sat in Scotland when Christopher Murray Grieve challenged the election of Sir Alec Douglas-Hume on the grounds that he'd misused election funds, going back a bit there. Grieve lost that one. I suspect the petitioners will lose this one. But we have at least a chance to see the case unfold on the telly. And Magnus Linklater in The Times says it makes great viewing, not least because in the lunch interval they cut to an interview with one of the petitioners who, speaking apparently in an impeccable home counties accent, said they'd brought the case, quote, on behalf of the people of Orkney and Shetland, unquote, who would be represented by a top lawyer, quote, or advocate, as they are known in Scotland, unquote. Aye, says Magnus Linklater, there's the voice of the people. I turn to The Scotsman and the Inside Westminster column of David Maddox. It was the image which could define British politics, or at least British opposition politics, for the next 5 years, he writes. As MPs returned from their long summer break, the Labour leadership frontrunner Jeremy Corbyn stood shoulder to shoulder with SNP Westminster leader Angus Robertson outside Parliament to address the TV cameras. It may be a little hasty to predict the outcome of the Labour leadership contest, Maddox acknowledges, but if all the signs are correct, Mr Corbyn will, as of Saturday, be leading Her Majesty's official opposition, while Mr Robertson will still be claiming to lead the real opposition at Westminster. What's sure, says Maddox, is that the two will be trying to outdo one another on left-wing rhetoric, opposing austerity, opposing the renewal of Trident and demanding ever more public spending. He adds, however, that they're likely to part company on tax unless the SNP suddenly decide to match their spending promises with the logical tax increases they imply. So what passes for news this morning, apart from the 2 UK nationals killed by an RAF drone attack in Syria, one of whom was from Aberdeen, slightly reminiscent this of the front page of the Press and Journal after the Titanic disaster, Aberdeen man dies at sea, or am I just making that one up? We have in most newspapers the First Minister of Fashion, Miss Sturgeon, as the latest model to grace the pages of Vogue, and there I've just given another plug to the damn thing. And a wearily familiar front page tag in The Scotsman, quote, brave Scotland so close as they go down fighting, unquote. I seem to have been reading that sentence for most of my life. But Fiona here has found something to interest us. A crumb from the kitchen, of all places.
Well, for bad idea of the week, or of last week to be precise, my eye was caught by a Sunday Post story, and I must warn you that you'll need a strong stomach for puns and tabloid speak for this one. This will leave you in a spin. Government chiefs are weighing up a bonkers, their word, plan to ban domestic washing machines, the Post says. Proposals set out by the Scottish Government could also see people forced to give up energy-gobbling white goods such as spin dryers and dishwashers. In a Scottish Government proposal entitled Making Things Last, mandarins, great journalist word that, mandarins argue that people should move away from product ownership and rather than actually owning appliances, they should use washing machine and dishwasher providers to pay per wash. Green types, loving the tabloidies, I expect you can spot green types by their woolly hats and sandals, claim that centralised laundrettes using super efficient washers would help the environment. But the plan, says the Sunday Post, set out in a baffling consultation document which was published last week, have been branded a suddy outrage. Get it?
Just about.
By people fed up with a claimed Scottish Government nanny state. Scottish Government MSP Alex Johnson slammed, another great tabloid word, the proposals and said, "It's bad enough the Scottish Government wants to appoint every child a state guardian and tell landowners what to do with their land. Now it seems the big brother mentality is creeping into how people wash their clothes and secure toys for their children." That's a reference to another idea, setting up libraries for toys and DIY tools. And that's the serious point. It's easy to have a go at these truly ridiculous ideas. Let's take the centralised laundrettes, for example. What about the petrol people use to get there? How green would that be? Or would people be banned from driving there, perhaps? What about the fact that Saturday morning would probably see people queuing out the door? Or what about the elderly, or mums with babies, or the sick, trudging through the wind and rain with bags of laundry? As for pay per wash in our own homes, the principle behind that must be, surely, that financial considerations would cause us to think twice before switching on. But the logical conclusion from that is that this is one more disadvantage from the poor. Can I afford to wash my children's clothes today or not? These are just the practical objections to this inane idea. The really worrying thing is that the Scottish Government just can't resist poking around in our lives, and they justify this by telling us that it's all for our own good. The Sunday Post quotes a government nanny, a government spokeswoman, as saying, "Making things last instead of throwing them away is good for the environment and for our finances. For example, it's estimated that the average drill is used for only 13 minutes of its life and that there are about £2.5 billion worth of unused clothes in wardrobes across Scotland. That's why we want to find ways of keeping valuable products in high value use for as long as possible." So what does this mean? Is the Scottish Government actually concerned about the amount of unworn clothes in our wardrobes? What's next? Clothing ration books to save us from a bad Marks and Spencer's Saturday afternoon habit? A named person for every washing machine? Or maybe the Scottish Government could stick to concerning itself with the bigger picture, the economy, education, drug abuse, violence in our streets, and resist the temptation to control the minutiae of how we run our lives.
How do you imagine, Fiona, that our one-party state would enforce a ban on washing machines? I mean, how will they know if the dissidents among us are still using them?
Well, it's a very good question. Cameras behind pictures on the wall, perhaps. I really don't know.
Or maybe encouraging the neighbours downstairs to climb.
To snitch, or children in the classroom to snitch on their parents.
Absolutely.
My mummy bought a washing machine from Poland last week.
The possibilities are endless. There's been much criticism of the massive new Glasgow hospital. Not sure what it's called these days. It's already had 3 names. Though reassuring to hear from Professor Walter Humes in the current edition of the Scottish Review that it's known to the staff as Betty's Hospital, that is, not well-known Yorkshire tea room of the same name. Isla had occasion to visit Betty's recently to see a friend. Isla, what did you make of it?
Well, I was very impressed, but also rather stunned with the new hospital. First of all, it's huge. I mean, it's a huge building. And when you walk in, you walk into a foyer with lots of different shops. It's a bit like a shopping mall. And escalators take you upstairs to...
What kind of shops?
Well, Marks